Everybody come here, gather round. Welcome to the freak show, the best in town.
Welcome to the Hive, everybody. If this is your first time tuning in, the Hive Mind is a contrarian thinking live stream where we are not afraid to think past the headlines. I have to give this little bit of a disclaimer in the beginning of every stream, because if I don't, NPCs lose their shit when people think out loud. And believe it or not, we have the freedom to think out loud on the internet with a group of strangers that have now bonded over that said freedom of thought and thinking out loud, known as the Hive. That's what we call the chat here. So if you are offended and rattled on behalf of others, this is not going to be the stream for you. However, if you like to read the footnotes, look into things, try to figure out what the mainstream media is lying to you about, and question everything, you are amongst friends. You have found your people. Last night, I posted a TikTok and I ranted about how bushy eyebrows, a blurry picture of a car, no license plate on that blurry picture. You can't see Brian Koberger in it. The prosecutor and the investigators admit that they can't put him in the house. He never stalked the victims, not at their house or at the Mad Greek. The 23 times of the cell phone pinging was from one tower that would have had a multitude of people also ping off that tower because it stretched all the way to the highway. And he regularly wiped and cleared his data. He took pictures in similar poses. He called his parents at the same time. He wasn't wearing gloves when he went through the trash. The good news is that the majority of the comments were positive. A lot of people have said, we're saying like, finally, somebody's saying it. But then the NPC mob, they got wind of this. They got wind of a free thinker. They got wind of somebody who doesn't have a fluoridated pineal gland. And all of the stops came out. And we are going to be breaking those stops down. And what does the narrative say versus what does the evidence say? Because there's no saving anybody who's been married to the script. That's what I've learned. I've learned that. There is absolutely no hope for the headline skimmers who just treat rumors like gospel. And I'm going to take a little bit different of an approach. Rather than ranting about NPCs, and I'm going to do my best to not, tonight's stream isn't going to be for the NPCs. It's not going to be in an attempt to red pill folks. Although if you do end up getting red pilled as a byproduct of it, there's no refunds on that. And you're welcome. But tonight's for the readers. The people who have read these docs, who have at least maybe even just listened to them, they've looked at alt sources, they've followed the court case and understand the court case summary and the ISP documents and the MP and the Moscow PD documents. They can wrap their head around a timeline around what the court has said about the evidence, rather than just Keith and his old balls saying on Netflix or Dateline rather. This is where you can find me on other platforms. As of right now, I have a Discord, I have a Substack, obviously I have the YouTube, and I have a TikTok. Please hit subscribe. That is the best way to support the stream and the channel. As of yesterday, the MSNPC t-shirts, the pink tinfoil hat, and I actually redid the black tinfoil hat as well. So there's two new versions of a tinfoil hat. There's the MSNPC t-shirts, and there's now embroidered Hive Mind hoodies available on birdiebombshell.com. To get into the Discord question of the day, Tied for Life 18 had asked Birdie. They said that they found the sheath on the second walkthrough, but the second walkthrough didn't happen until the next day. Well, the bodies were removed from the house at 9 p.m. that same night. How did they not see the sheath as the bodies were being removed? Or when forensics were all in the house? And as you can see, going back to my childhood where SpongeBob is like saying imagination, I swapped it out with planted evidence. It's odd that it wasn't found on the first walkthrough, and then the trace DNA is so minuscule. Single source touch / trace DNA, whatever you want to refer to it as, was the only source. When you add those two together, the weight of whether or not that's planted increases significantly, in my opinion. Dude, that's such a good point. Is there even a sheath at this point? Is there? Has anybody seen a picture of the sheath? Because they don't have the murder weapon. They don't have a motive. They can't put Brian Koberger in the house. I don't think they do. I don't think they have it. Now, they tell us that the sheath is found. Maybe that's why it was never seen. And maybe that's why it looks like it was planted. And they really don't care if people think it is because they know they don't have it anyways. Moving on to the Hive Mind finds. As you can see, we got Agent Koberger here. He's tuning in this evening with us. He's about to say, hold my beer. Somebody better help me out. And I also want to give a shout out to the UFO dog. If you are in the Discord, the UFO dog has been dropping some heat with their artwork and the program that they use. I've also noticed that there's a section for the Hive Mind's pets. So maybe I'll start doing like a pet of the week. I always think that's fun and interesting. We should have it be where you're a pet of the week, but you have to put a tinfoil hat on your pet. That would be fun. And then we pick the funniest submission, and we could start off each week on Monday nights with Devil's Advocates. And we could do I'll put up 2 pictures and we can vote on the pet of the week. Would you guys like that? I think that'd be hilarious. Let's get into the Hive Mind finds. This first one, you guys, we're on a roll with Idaho again, just being like a portal to hell, as I've said many, many times. And this is another one that's just very odd. This comes from RN Court. They sent this article, and Idaho's football team unveils a new dark mode helmets for their 2025 season. And again, this was my reaction when I saw that. If you've ever seen that video of this young kid that's in line, I think at like a Burger King or maybe some sort of restaurant, but he's just like kind of looking over at some dude. He's like acting all awkward. It's like, whoa, hang on. Is anybody reading the room here on their marketing team? It should be a teddy bear. That's what they need. They need like a teddy bear. They need to like soften it up. They don't need the dark mode with a Viking axe and a throwing spear. Now, this one I decided to throw in here because, well, yes, this is a little bit older. So a lot of people have obviously heard about Dana Smithers, right? So what happened to Dana Smithers, the woman whose death is now linked to Brian Koberger? This was said on May 26, 2023 by The Independent. Dana Smithers was last seen alive in May of 2022. Her remains were found in a wooded area last month. Now, Brian Koberger's parents are testifying in an investigation into her death, Rachel Sharp reports. And Lydia Unhinged had said this, or they go on to say, anyone know anything about this? This was in 2023, and it's not him, but his parents had to testify at grand jury. See, I always knew there was a rumbling about about Dana Smithers. I'm either drawing a blank on it, or I didn't know his parents testified at a grand jury for it. How is this legal? If nothing else comes out of this article, for the people that don't understand what I'm talking about by how many normies absorb a headline, and if they just opened the article within 10 sentences, the headline's trashed. Why has her death been linked to Brian Koberger? You guys all reading this? Are you guys all reading this? It remains unclear what connection, if any, her disappearance and death may have to Brian Koberger. I'm 3 mouse scrolls away from the truth. Actually, and then when you get to the 5th scroll of the mouse, you actually have the regional police department releasing a statement insisting that there's no evidence. And they put no evidence in quote, showing a link between Mr. Koberger and Smithers' disappearance. This is gaslighting on an industrial level. Daddy Jones comes in hot with the mic drop, and I have the Ron Burgundy meme of, well, that escalated quickly. Tell me if you've not heard a more wonderfully summed up rant. Remember when this case was about 4 beautiful young people who were tragically murdered way before their time? Now it's become a conduit for basically everything wrong with America today. White supremacy, police corruption, the opioid epidemic, culture of silence, location tracking, government access to all our information, media narratives, the effed up justice system, drug and sex trafficking, and on and on. I don't see any way Brian was the sole perpetrator, and I don't think he killed anyone, to be honest. But sometimes I wish I was ignorant enough to buy that reality, because the things we've actually seen in Idaho are effing sinister. This case has just pulled back the curtain on a system that, yes, we know is pushing a narrative. We know that has their interest groups that they got to satisfy. But Jesus H, this first sentence of this case was about 4 beautiful young people who were tragically murdered way before their time. Now, you question an 8-hour delay, and you're the equivalent of a quadruple murderer. Lindsay from Round the Way, this is so wonderfully said. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop off screen. If you guys want to screenshot this to actually use this as ammo, Lindsay from Round the Way says, in case anyone gets a post from a guilter or shamer stating, sure, internet sleuths are smarter than, now more than, have experience in, short list. So I think what they're getting at is like, what have internet sleuths ever done? And I love how they go, here's a short list. Golden State Killer, where we had civilian genealogists ID'd D'Angelo. The police later confirmed it. You got Bear Brook, where a podcasting and genetic genealogy, podcasters and genetic genealogy kept it alive. Those outsiders led to Terry Rasmussen. Sharon Marshall, also known as the girl in the picture, sleuths and journalists uncovered her identity. Floyd's crimes were separate. The Zodiac Cipher in 2020, most people probably remember that. It was recent. Private code breakers solved what law enforcement couldn't. Then you had, in 2009, Abraham Shakespeare, civilian tips exposed D.D. Moore. Watergate, Woodward and Bernstein broke it first. Law enforcement followed. This is going back to the 50s. Is there anybody in here that remembers the Emmett Till case where family and activists surfaced, ignored evidence and witnesses? Is there anybody that remembers that? I'm curious. Then you got the Boston priest abuse. Global Spotlight uncovered systemic cover-up before prosecutions. You got Luca Magnotta, 2012, online sleuths traces digital footprint and alerted authorities. I want to go back to what Gabby said. Does anybody in the Hive have a guess at what I'm about to say when it comes to that GoFundMe? And again, people are going to say, stop talking about the victims. She's traumatized. Although it may have just been a legal cover to essentially whitewash the 8-hour time gap. But in regards to the GoFundMe, does anybody know what I'm about to say about that? Because we mentioned it one time in the Hive, and we played the tinfoil hat conspiracy for it. Amanda B. from West Virginia. Boom. And Chantelly Lace got it as well. And do you guys think it's odd that GoFundMe started before those documents dropped? I have a video here that somebody had sent me. It's going to trigger some people when it comes to that GoFundMe. You know what? I haven't done this in a while.
Please retrieve your nearest tinfoil hat. Place hat firmly on your head.
What if Dylan's attorney knew that this plea deal was going to require a victim impact statement? From a legal strategy, if you knew your client couldn't pay you, do you think it would be a stretch or a conspiracy that a lawyer would say, you're going to need funds, put a GoFundMe for your trauma? Because we know that after these victim impact statements, the emotional sentiment will be the highest it ever is. Although many people probably won't talk about it because Olivia and the rest of the G's were talking about giant D's. And that's going to take over the headlines. So it actually works in your favor, Dylan, that we're going to set up a GoFundMe while you're pulling on everybody's emotional heartstrings. And there will be, tens of thousands of people that can emotionally pallet, a $5, $10, $20 donation to you. And you're going to be able to pay me because you're going to need legal defense if Brian ever does appeal this with these new documents that come out, because the public sentiment's going to completely change and do a 180 on you when they figure out that the prosecution had Ann Taylor filing against them for withholding evidence of blood on a jacket that was found in your room. And I already know there's got to be at least one person in here. I'm screenshotting this. Do your thing. Don't care. This is a video from Docket Decoder, and Sorted Out had said someone from DM's inner circle speaks in the beginning. It's wild if true. So this is crazy. This is when my ears really started to perk up. Predit or Prey, who ended up posting this video about Dylan Mortensen breaking her silence, close friend reveals what actually happened with the Idaho 4. This was on January 13th of 2023. It's only got 50,000 views, which is pretty remarkable. And it says the facts in this video has received prior permission from Dylan Mortensen. This video has received prior permission from Dylan Mortensen to be shared with the masses. There's plenty of other details and information she has allowed me to release, but this was the most important fact that she wanted to clear up first. There's 4 shocking details she has been specifically instructed by the prosecutor that she cannot release. I wonder if one of those shocking details is that, no, it wasn't Brian Koberger. Hopefully this helps clear a lot of speculation going around YouTube.
Before we dive into what I'm referring to.
Hold on. This is a wild. That is a wild graphic to start a video with.
About the Fed screwing or attempting to screw Dylan. And give you a brief background as to who I am. So my girlfriend is in Dylan's inner circle. And by inner circle, I mean inner circle. Like they've hung out almost every day since the incident occurred. And I've seen her a plethora of times as well. So you're going to notice I'm not going to use words like allegedly, supposedly, because all of this is actual firsthand factual information. Where should I start to clear things up? First of all, there's a lot of misconception about Dylan suffering from PTSD or trauma or any of that. None of that is accurate. In fact, when we try to console Dylan after the incident, she's the one that was laughing at me and my girlfriend and I, talking about we're so weird, and we tried to give her a hug and stuff.
That part.
So she's still the same.
That part. But then there's an entire GoFundMe for her grief and trauma. Hold on. Now, I already know people are going to say, that's a normal reaction to have after trauma. Okay, Jesus H, there's always the outlier. You know, one time I had heard somebody, I have no idea if they have any sort of accreditation to make this claim, but it really stuck with me. And now I feel like because it stuck with me, I'm going to at least pass it along to you. And it's that when somebody points out the outlier in what's meant to be an obvious blanket statement, that's a sign of low IQ.
To console Dylan after the incident, she's the one that was laughing at me and my girlfriend and I, talking about we're so weird, and we tried to give her a hug and stuff. So she's still the same old Dylan. She's had a rough life growing up. She's been through a lot. She doesn't have PTSD and didn't suffer any trauma. The incident that night, and what I'm referring to with the feds actually put a lot of words into her mouth that she didn't say herself first. So there was a lot of leading statements that they were insinuating to her. And she was really scared the first few days, obviously, after the incident occurred. So, like, the reason none of it makes sense in the affidavit is because it didn't really happen that way. So she never stood there shocked when she saw the individual. She was just standing in a doorway, like, you know, like anybody who opens the door. It was just, you know, she opened the door and yelled at Ethan and Xana, and who she thought was their friend. She yelled at them to be quiet. That's what was going on with that situation. And she just went back into her room. She locked the door like usual and, you know, went to sleep. Everything was quiet after she yelled at them, so she didn't think anything of it. For everyone who's creating these random stories about her being shocked or traumatized, she didn't realize anything was going on. And it might sound crazy, it might sound dumb, but she really had no clue anything was going on. They were being a little loud, so she yelled at them to be quiet. And that's it. She locked her door and she just went back to her room. You know, and she didn't want to be nosy or anything. So, you know, she was kind of new to that house, so she didn't want to be nosy. and get up all up in their business, especially at in the middle of the night or early morning. So it's as simple as that. Everyone trying to blow that whole situation into something that's not. Um, so yeah, that's that. And she didn't actually get a real good look at Brian. At the time, she assumed it was one of Xana and Ethan's friend who was just getting ready to leave, who was walking out. She didn't get that good of a look. The feds were really aggressive with Dylan the first few days, which is why she hired the attorney to begin with, because of the treatment of her during the interview, more like an interrogation, to be honest. So that's why she got an attorney, because the way they were talking to her, and they didn't really understand or believe why she's the only one alive when you kind of skip rooms to get to the other two rooms. So she didn't really like the feel of how the interrogators or the feds were talking to her.
Is that shocking? I feel like you would be like, yeah, this is reasonable. You probably got to clear me, seeming how I didn't notice a quadruple murder for 8 hours, and I had actually went out and yelled at them, and my excuse was eventually that I heard Vampire Diaries playing out the exact situation going on in my house, and then I called 911 for only one person that was unconscious. I can see why they pressed you originally.
Why she's the only one alive when you kind of skip rooms to get to the other two rooms.
Wait.
So
why she was the only one alive? Did you guys just catch that?
Because the way they were talking to her, and they didn't really understand or believe why she's the only one alive when you kind of skip rooms to get to the other two rooms. So she didn't really like the feel of how the the interrogators or the feds were talking to her. And within like a few days after the incident, they approached her with pictures of Brian. I was like, is this the guy? Do you think this is the guy? This is definitely him, right? And they were almost leading her to believe this has to be the person. And she wasn't really sure, but they kind of put those words in her mouth. It's almost like, they were insinuating it so much to where she was like, yeah, I think, yeah, no, it's definitely him. And that's when they just kind of like ran with it. So what you see in the affidavit is it didn't play out that way. So Dylan's attorney and her, and actually all of us, are pretty upset at how they threw her under the bus in the affidavit. When's the last time you've seen a witness or like a snitch in a case, their actual names being mentioned? The fact that they didn't redact it. We all think that the feds and prosecutors threw her name in there purposely to apply more pressure, because Dylan was really wishy-washy during the interrogation. And with them, putting these words, set in stone on paper, it kind of puts a lot of pressure on her now, because everyone views her as like some star witness, the star of the case. So that's what we all believe, that she kind of is getting screwed over by the feds and the prosecutor, because now she has to testify and she has to say kind of what words they put in her mouth instead of what she actually believed, and what she actually knows happened, like with her own words, not words that were like shoved in her mouth.
We get it. So,
So yeah, her attorney is pretty upset. She's pretty upset, but at the same time, she knows that she can be a huge help in this case. So it's not like she's identifying somebody she didn't see. It just didn't play out necessarily like, oh, bushy eyebrows. She saw bushy eyebrows, and was able to 100% identify him. It's just initially when detectives and feds came in and took over the scene had been contaminated so badly by the local authorities. When they first came, first responders, they stomped all over the place, contaminated the scene. All the other people that were at the house, they were walking up and down the steps to make sure what they're seeing is what they're really seeing. So I mean, this is a scene that was really badly contaminated. So to equal the playing field, the feds feel like having a star witness is critical here. But just the way she was being interrogated initially was it's kind of crazy. It's not what you guys think. They weren't being all sensitive and gentle to her. They were really accusatory and kind of pressured, put the press on her. Thought that she might have something to do with it, because it just didn't make sense to them why she's the only one alive. And on top of that, didn't see anything or really hear anything. She didn't want to be nosy, didn't want to get up in her roommate's business. She told him to be quiet. I mean, the last thing that crossed her mind was people are getting slaughtered next door and upstairs. So I think that's pretty much everything I've covered. So yeah, just to go over the whole suffering trauma. She was shocked that she saw him walk past her. Like, it's not as dramatic as you guys think. Like, he was already halfway towards the kitchen and walking out. And for all of y'all that are scratching your heads, yes, police do lie. They've kind of thrown everybody around the ringer through this whole case from the very start. And you have to think about it. Why would a survivor, a victim, have to hire an attorney? Obviously, they were mistreating her pretty badly as they're interrogating her, and especially now throwing her name in the affidavit like that. That's all because they're pretty upset she hired an attorney to begin with. And because they want to put a lot of pressure on her from the public for her to be the star witness. But aside from that, she's doing good. She's the same old Dylan. Yeah, no, there's no trauma, PTSD, anything. She really feels for, her friends who are deceased. And, she does beat herself up a little bit about, not being more involved in the situation that night. But, realistically, I mean, something like that's not going to cross your mind that something like that's taking place in your house. So yeah, she does feel for the family, and she's really saddened by the whole situation. But as far as her as an individual, she's still the same person. She's not like a traumatized individual, So yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything. And let's see. Yeah, no, that's everything. Hopefully this video doesn't come off sounding crazy, and clears up a lot of the questions everybody has. All right.
Has anybody looked into that guy? That's what I want to know. Because that dude sounds, a little bit like he's got some skin in the game too. Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it. Yeah. There was 4 people really stabbed, but it was not nearly as dramatic. And shame on the investigators for putting any sort of pressure on her, since she was the only one alive in the house and it was noon when she called. I was pretty mind blown. I had not seen this. This came out August 1st of 2024, and It's Just Me had submitted this for a Hive Mind find. It's regarding Jonah Chapin. They took a quote excerpt out of this, and it says, following the sale, Forsberg left the area driving a green Ford Explorer. Given the presence of a firearm and menacing conduct, law enforcement activated their emergency lights and sirens in an attempt to stop Forsberg's vehicle in Airway Heights. Forsberg failed to yield and ultimately fled, driving recklessly to escape. Forsberg was subsequently federally indicted and a warrant issued for his arrest. On October 26th of 2022, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, aka the ATF, arranged a controlled buy. Okay, so listen in here. So this is clearly a sting. The ATF arranged a controlled buy of approximately 700 Fetty pills from Forsberg using an undercover agent. Forsberg had 2 other individuals with him, co-defendants Jonah Chapin and Brady Towner. While the undercover agent was negotiating the sale with Forsberg, Towner brandished a gun and moved to a position of advantage behind the undercover agent. On November 15th, 2022, November 15th, 2022, ATF saw Forsberg driving a vehicle in the Spokane area. ATF attempted to contact the vehicle. However, the vehicle attempted to flee. Forsberg, Chapin, and Forsberg's then girlfriend, Eva Marie Miller, were ultimately removed from the vehicle and detained. During a search of the vehicle, agents seized bags containing large quantities of Fetty pills and approximately $20,000 in Forsberg's backpack, 2 loaded handguns, to include one readily accessible in the driver's door panel, box ammunition, several cell phone, drug ledgers, and a small amount of methamphetamine. There's a lot of people that are asking, who is Jonah? The last name is obviously the same. I don't know. It could be a cousin. It could be whatever. I'm not even claiming that. I'm just saying it's odd, too, that that name is the same. It doesn't sound like a very, common name. Maybe it could be. Uncle Daddy Brother said, I found an obituary for Joseph Alexander Chapin, passed away September 7, 2023, that mentions he's survived by sons, including both Ethan Chapin and Jonah Chapin. See, that again, that's okay that we're thinking that, and it's not. I don't know. I mean, it's not that I even expected there to be said connection. It just had the same last name in the same area with drugs and arrest right after all of that shit went down, I think a normal person would think, holy shit, I'd be curious if this is related, right? That's one thing that does bother me when people are like, look, they're a conspiracy channel. They're trying to find this Chapin related to that Chapin. They're not even related. It's like, no shit. We weren't saying that they 100% were. We just said it'd be wild if they were. It's called research. It's called looking into it. You know, yes, exactly. Shout out to the Mitty Woody. We hedge forth. Yeah, me too. Me too. Exactly. Okay. Wicca, I'm gonna give you the top dog for the solid effort just in typing out the comments while looking all that up. You know, the backpack with the money was a little bit odd. I think my ears perked up when I heard that. But yes, deductive reasoning, absolutely. The Hive is alive. The think tank Hive. Look at this. This is so cool to read right now, and I hope everybody in here feels like they are a part of this Hive, because without you all, it wouldn't be the Hive. This is great. Yes, it was a nothing burger, but now we know. I agree. Chrissy said, Wilma derailed us. It's Wicca, Chrissy. Participation trophy. That's right. That's all we can give ourselves, right? We'll give ourselves top dog for top participators in that. That goes out to the Hive. Oh, autocorrect. Oh, it was autocorrect, huh, Chrissy? Oh, that's hilarious. Nonetheless, Hive, cheers. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for